welcome to Trend Talks. Today I have the pleasure to talk with Karsten Klug. He is Managing Director of Saferay Operations and Blueray Services, of which the latter one he was the founder. Blueray is focused on O&M services, so we're going to discuss that today. And Karsten has been involved in the solar industry since 2009. Welcome, Karsten.
Hello, Edwin. Good afternoon.
Hi. Karsten, what do you experience with your company if you're focused on O&M, service provision? What do you see as an impact of this current crisis on your business?
So the current crisis has an indirect impact on our business because we are limited in traveling, right? And our assets, we've got an own asset base of more than 300 megawatts in 3 countries. So actually, I've got a team in Japan I haven't seen for over a year, and I can only communicate with virtually. We can still keep it up. The business itself is generating electricity, and therefore it's needed. And yeah, our on-site technicians can freely travel to the sites and do service as needed. But yeah, the inter-country traveling very limited right now, and that's something which is a huge disadvantage right now in managing the portfolio, but especially the human resources in the different countries.
Yeah, I can understand. What if you look at the trends in asset management and operation maintenance of power plants, what kind of trends do you distinguish?
So trends of asset management for us is mostly right now the aging assets, as we ourselves as Saferay Group, which Blueray Services is a part of, do operate an own asset base, which is on average in the German market more than 8 years old, the oldest power plant being 10 years old, and for third-party operators, even 2008 or 2009. And with those power plants, we are facing quite a lot of challenges when it comes to components, and that's something which keeps us very busy with repowering, revamping stories and cases where we need to replace panels, where we need to repair inverters, even replace inverters on different sites, and that's a huge deal and very challenging right now.
Yeah, I can imagine that in some of these plants, so before the year 2010, the modules, the spare parts are no longer available, or the inverters. So how do you solve that?
Yeah, so when it comes to modules, luckily the manufacturer of our modules are still existent. Some of them have been bought by other companies, but so far we experienced quite a good warranty management by those manufacturers. That means the panels we already replaced have been partially delivered by the manufacturer itself, and that replacement took part last year and the year before last year. And it's mostly defective backsheets, actually, or PID issues we faced on site.
But these modules, they won't have the same power output, right?
Definitely.
How do you solve that? It can also impact like the BOS of a complete system if you have to mount new, bigger modules with the power outage in compared to the original ones.
Yes, so the new modules sometimes have more than 50% more power compared to the old modules. That means we have to completely redesign the string layout on site, and that leaves some kind of gaps in between the tables. It's quite funny when you look at it from a drone perspective. And this does also have an advantage as well, because we need to stay within the DC capacity we originally signed for in the feed-in tariff scheme. But if we've got now more like 30% or even 40% more space on site, we can use the existing mounting structure and put additional modules on it and actually have a second side in the original side, which is also an advantage we are gaining from that activities.
Yeah, and this is a very interesting topic. I was just wondering also from curiosity, what would you advise for new plants? If you design now and engineer a new plant, would you put a lot of modules or inverters in store as a spare part for the longer term? Or would you say that in the future we will also do replacement by then new modules, and that re-engineering and repowering is even better?
What I would do is keep it flexible, which means choose a mounting system which is quite easily to adjust when it comes to module heights. For example, old modules have been 40-45 millimeters frame height. New modules are lower in frame height, most probably, and also the dimensions are in general different. So keep your mounting structure in a flexible manner, that you later can add different frame sizes. Think of the cabling of the arrays and how you might change that in 10, 15 or 20 years. So think ahead what might happen in 20 years or 15 years, what might look different. So keep the flexibility high of the system. And that's something which we did in some of the projects and others we didn't. And therefore it's very different what kind of impact this has on the replacement cost.
Yeah. If we go towards the end of the interview, what kind of opportunities do you see in the market? Where do you see a gap or something's missing in this field?
So right now where I see a gap is where we actually went into with our new subsidiary, Blueray Services. First, we created that subsidiary for our own portfolio to make sure that we can service our central inverters going forward. And many of the larger central inverter manufacturers merged in the past or even vanished, and the power plant will need to operate another 10, 20 years or even longer. So we secured the field service engineers, we secured the spare parts supply, and made sure that we are able, even if the manufacturer is not present anymore, to keep our system up and running without replacing everything.
Yeah, that seems like a wise strategy in current market, and which is also where we see a lot of consolidation, right? And so that companies won't exist maybe in 10 or 20 years anymore.
Correct. So that's what we already experienced. For example, with some manufacturer who delivered inverters to a site in Spain, 15 not existent anymore, no spare parts anymore available. And this leads to different options of how you repower that power plant if the manufacturer is not available anymore.
Yeah. All right, we run out of time. So thank you very much for this interview, Karsten, and I hope to see you hopefully in one of our live events very soon again. Thank you.
Yes, next week, workshop Repowering.
All right, that's a good one. Thank you, bye-bye.
Thank you, bye Edwin.